Hello, and thank you for tuning into the Stuff I Heard podcast. Excuse me. Daylight savings time is here, folks. We voted against observing it several years ago, and we're still doing it. Thank you, government of inefficiency. Um, we have technology now. We have cell phones that can wake us up. We have vibrating beds. We have all kinds of things that can get our attention to wake us up. We don't need to go by candlelight all the time. Um, from what I understand, daylight savings time was this is stuff I heard. Daylight savings time was established because farmers were having a tough time working within the hours that were necessary because of the way the earth tilts in the northern hemisphere in America. Um, and they wanted it to be lighter whenever they were working. And when we established that time was going to be a thing, we suddenly gave out people time cards and time clocks and time expectations. They said, "Oh, we need to adjust the time for whenever the winter solstice starts to happen in the fall, and that way we can work people during the daylight hours more. So when they're home, they're not burning as much candlelight." Okay, can we all agree that we're past that? Um, we voted in our state, and many states have voted to um, let this go. I mean, this is no longer a thing that we do. So why are we still observing daylight savings time here in South Carolina? Let's ask the Google. Why are we still observing daylight savings time? I need to put a thing at the end. In South Carolina. South Carolina is still observing daylight savings time because the state's 2020 law to make it permanent has not taken effect. So, 4 years ago, we made a law to do away with it, and it still hasn't taken effect. Why? Federal law requires Congress to vote to end time change before it can take effect. Sunshine Protection Act, the Senate unanimously approved the Sunshine Protection Act in 22, but the House did not pass it. A 2023 version of the act has not gained much momentum. Two House bills in 2023 related to the exempting South Carolina from daylight savings time died in a committee. The Uniform Time Act of 1966 allowed states to exempt themselves from daylight savings time without permission from the Department of Transportation. However, the act did not allow the states to stay permanently on daylight savings time. The U.S. Department of Transportation oversees daylight savings time and the U.S. time zones, and the DOT says that energy reduction and reduced crime are the reasons for having both standard and daylight savings time. Whatever. Whatever. I mean, it's just silly. So I wake up at 7 something this morning and the sun is blaring through the window. And yet at 5 o'clock tonight, it's going to be dark. Why? Why? Daylight savings time to make the most of the daylight. Daylight saving times moves daylight hours into working hours, which can be especially beneficial in the cities that experience more dark days. Um, we just said it gets darker at 5 o'clock, which is working time and driving home time. Daylight savings time was originally created to reduce fuel consumption. That's when it was originally done for electric lighting during world wars. While studies on the actual energy savings are conflicted, a 2008 Department of Energy report found that daylight savings time saved about 0.5% in electricity used per day. To reduce traffic accidents, driving is easier when you can see your surroundings and what you're doing. Okay, that's true. But Is there more traffic going to work or coming home from work? Isn't it the same? So that's debunked. That's there's no way that can be real because okay, you're saying you can see better going to work. Well, then you can't see better coming home from work because it's already dark. So you just screwed that up. That balances itself out. To promote commerce. What? Daylight savings time has strong supporters among business advocates who argue it helps drive the economy. No, it doesn't. There's no fact checking here. This is just stuff on Google. However, there are some drawbacks. It can disrupt sleep schedules. Yeah, no kidding. An American Academy of Sleep Medicine says that standard time is better fit for the human biological clock. It can lead to longer winters. Daylight savings time can make winters longer and darker and fewer light surprises. That no. The time of the day has nothing to do with making winter longer. That's dumb. The U.S. has implemented the repealed daylight savings time multiple times since it began in 1918. And in 2070, the U.S. tried to make daylight savings time permanent, but it was quickly reversed due to unpopularity. In 2022, the CBS News slash YouGov poll found that nearly 80% of Americans supported changing it to the current system. However, Congress was unable to decide whether to keep daylight savings time year round or abandon it altogether. States can opt out and remain in the standard time year round, as Hawaii and Arizona have done. However, they are not allowed to establish a daylight savings time year round. This sounds like the government just talking in circles. We're going to do it. You guys voted for it, but we're not going to let you do it. I mean, that's basically what it's saying, right? Now, this is the Stuff I Heard podcast. Let me tell you about some stuff I heard. So, right off the bat, congratulations to the USC Gamecocks. You guys took it to the Texas A&M Aggies. This game, coming into this game, I was like, man, this is going to be a tough game because the Aggies looked really good last week. Now, usually when you come off a huge win like that, you're exhausted. So I felt like because we were playing in South Carolina, it was going to be towards the Gamecocks' favor. I also felt like because the Aggies had used everything they had last week to win, they were going to be exhausted and probably not be their best selves, which ended up being the case. South Carolina had a huge win last night. I mean, good lord, it was very impressive for a Gamecocks fan. Let's see, USC Gamecocks football. It was 44-20 was the final. Lenore Sellers looked great running the ball. He had a few passes that looked pretty good. Um, the Aggies defense just looked tired trying to catch someone running. It seemed like they couldn't stop anybody running. So congratulations, first of all, to the USC South Carolina Gamecocks. Good job. Next week, you're always looking at the next game. Um, next week, who are we playing? Where is the Where's the schedule? Come on, internet. Make us better. Schedule. Next week is Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt. Now, Vanderbilt yesterday won, also a big win. Um, it's impressive to see Vanderbilt doing the things they're doing. That kind of scares me a little bit because we're going to go into Vanderbilt, and because we came off this huge win, we might get rocked. I'm just being realistic here. There's a real chance that we could go there and have high expectations about how, oh, we just beat the number 10 in the country. We're Vanderbilt. It's a bunch of doctors. Yeah, okay. Vanderbilt has beat a lot of people. They beat Alabama this year. Okay. Vanderbilt's doing some damage. All right. Then after Vanderbilt, we got Missouri at home. We're going to be at home. And then we're at home against Wofford. And then we play at Clemson. Clemson lost yesterday to an unranked Louisiana. So there's that. Um, But yeah, some good college football. I'm digging it. It's fun to watch. All right. Now, I don't know who's seen this or who hasn't seen this, but watched a little Joe Rogan this past week. I had a work trip to do, and so I punched it up on Spotify. I saw where Donald Trump was on Joe Rogan, and the first things that I saw online were saying that the YouTube version of it was censored. And for a while, they hid it somehow in their algorithm because they didn't want people finding it. I don't know if that's true or if the thing was so popular that it tanked the servers that YouTube has. Not really sure. There is a flaw when it comes to the fact that a lot of people are in charge of this social media experiment that we're doing. That's what it is. It's a social media experiment. We're all right now allowed to have free speech. We're all allowed to speak our minds and to share information openly. Um, it has been said in interviews time and time again by Harris, um, by Waltz, by everybody in her group that we need to censor the things that people say. Suddenly, this group of political candidates in the Democratic Party have turned into the bad guy. They've turned into this. I mean, when I was a kid, the Democrats were hippies. The Democrats were the peace, love, happiness, let everybody live, don't go to war. Now, all of a sudden, they're the ones that are warmongering and they're the ones that are telling people that they need to watch what they say and they can't say things and we need to end hate speech. Well, what do you determine hate speech is? Who makes that decision? Is that are we entering into a science fiction version of 1984 where you have the Ministry of Truth and they only allow information out that they seem to think is okay? How is the freedom of speech handled then? We're talking about our First Amendment right being challenged by someone who is trying to win popular votes with a bunch of people standing on stage saying vote for me, and yet they're all implicated in a pedo ring with P Diddy, and the American public. Here's a large group of the American public. It's like, oh look, it's my favorite singer says I should vote for her because that other guy's a bad guy, and they're not paying attention to anything other than the fact that it's a popular person saying vote for this person. All of these people that have taken the stage to speak out and say vote for her. Not once have you heard them talk about anything they stand for politically. Not once have you heard them talk about what they're going to do. And yet, all of them are in this P. Diddy ring of influence people that are at his parties and hanging out where he's going to go down and he's going to probably name as many people as he can so he doesn't have to do as much jail time. And you're going to see political people, you're going to see people that you think were super cool in the past are going to go to jail for doing awful things to children and to each other and drugging them and all sorts of things. All this stuff is coming out little at a time. Now, it's not coming out on main media because mainstream media has a vested interest. As long as they can keep her in charge, they get to keep making money. Follow the money. That's always the theme in all of these movies that I watch. Follow the money, right? Anytime there's something bad that happens, where did the money go? Who spent the money? Where did the money come from? Okay. A lot of this money is coming from pharmaceuticals. Okay. I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of turning on my TV and seeing a ton of pharmaceutical ads. This was a big conversation that Rogan had with JD Vance. He didn't get a chance to talk to Donald Trump about it because he just wanted to have a conversation with the guy. And listen, I know I said it in the past. Trump on stage says a lot of wild stuff. And a lot of it's like, why did you even say that? Um, but you got to imagine being on stage and having people shout things at you all the time. They're wanting something that's clickbait. They want something to have a reaction. They want to get you flustered, but you can't be flustered. Like you can't be the person in charge and be level headed and think clearly and all the other stuff because people think that you're not passionate enough. I mean, Ben Carson would have been a great president. He was a nice guy. Everybody who talks about him says he's a nice guy. He's a very nice guy, very smart guy. People didn't want smart. They wanted the guy that's going to react. They wanted the guy that's going to push back. We could have had Tulsi Gabbard. We still could. Tulsi Gabbard is a well thought out individual, serves our American um, military as a combat medic, was a senator, very well spoken, understands what she's saying to the facts, doesn't lose her temper, doesn't call out people, doesn't call names, just tells you exactly what the facts are. Okay. We have that individual. We got JD Vance, super calm, tells the truth. Whatever you're asking, he's just telling you what he thinks, what he knows. If he doesn't know for sure, he's quick to say, I'm not really sure, but I think this, I've heard this. Okay. Then you got someone, I don't know, like our president, our vice president, who was not elected to even run. They just kind of pushed her into that position. Not once. She doesn't have one vote. Okay. And now she's running for president. They didn't have a runoff. They didn't have a who's your Democratic nominee. It's hey, she's it. Go with it. Okay. And with that, I'm sure she's shell shocked. I'm sure she's like, what is going on? I have to suddenly have these answers that people ask me questions for, which is why there's television commercials that show her when they say, what do you plan to do different? And she's like, well, nothing comes to mind. And now, like Trump says he has an idea. Suddenly her thing has changed to his idea. She's trying to get all of the popular votes, and it just seems like I want to be popular and I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do what everybody says. Okay, well that's one way to do it. But if you got some bad people in your corner and those bad people are telling you, "Hey, we need to really limit what people say." Guess what? I'm done with this podcast because I can't have free speech. I can't talk about things right now. Right now, they have passed a law saying that they can use military force, lethal force on Americans who demonstrate against the government. So let's say your government goes out and does anything. This recently, let me look up the thing. Lethal, uh, lawful, or government. NMENT. Come on, fingers. Against American citizens. So the first one, the first thing when I type it up, government. Why did I misspell that? LETH. Fact check. All right. Which one's a reputable source? I don't know who Reuters is. I don't know who Brennan Justice is. Washington Post. No, Biden didn't authorize military force against uh, protesters a week ago. That's what was posted. Um, the ABC News, which is Disney. Oh, here's another fun fact. Disney posted a live end of results of the election during a F1 race on television, and a ton of people screenshot it or videoed it while it was happening and put it on what used to be Twitter. Um, it's put other places, but it was taken down. Twitter is allowing it to be up because Elon Musk is like, no, 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 the truth needs to be there. Um, all right. I'm reading this thing. Sorry. It cited the Department of Defense does not allow troops to use force on U.S. citizens. Its timing is its release was not related to the election. Contrary to rumors and rhetoric, the circulation on social media, beware common type of election related scams. Pentagon regularly updates its directives. Um, assistance in responding with assets with political or lethality or any situation in which reasonably foresees that providing The requested assistance may involve the use of force that is likely in the result of lethal force, including death or serious bodily injury. Okay, you just called it false, and then you just word for word, in quotes, says this comes from the director of the Secretary of Defense. Okay, so who's running the fact checking stuff here? What is AFP? That's the thing, though. See, you get information just like I did. You start going down a rabbit hole and going, which part of this is real and which part of this isn't. Now, recently updated Department of Defense guidelines on intellect. See, here's the thing. I'm reading this on a website, so I don't even know if this is true. Um, the Posse Comitas Act in 1878. What? I don't know. Do your research. Some craziness. But video after video has come out where they're saying that they should criminalize free speech. Um, I mean, video after video have come out of our candidates saying one thing at one rally and saying something completely opposite at another. Um, just this is an election of information, right? Which side are you on? Doesn't matter which side you're on. I mean, here's the thing. I can be friends with people who vote differently than me. It doesn't mean that I think they're bad people. I just think they got different information than I got. That's all. Okay. Um, I'm 50 now. I've lived to see a lot of people take office. I've lived through them taking office. No matter who's in office, we've lived through it. There is a thought process, though, that this is a systematic, slow change, kind of like when you play Chinese checkers. Chinese checkers is a thing of accumulation. You slowly take a piece of the board, one marble at a time. You slowly move, you slowly advance until suddenly you've got control of the board and you've got control of everything. Now, that's how you do pretty much anything. I mean, how do you cook a frog? You don't throw them into a pot of hot, oil or whatever, because they immediately jump out. You put them in when it's cold, and then you slowly heat it up. After a while, they don't even realize that they're cooking. Same thing with the American public. Same thing with anybody. Okay. Over time, people adapt. That's what people do. We all adapt. If you get into the tub and you stay there too long, your fingers start getting wrinkly. You're adapting so that you can actually grip things in the water. Um, that's just one small example. But we're constantly adapting. We're constantly trying to figure out how to survive, right? So, does it matter who gets elected? It does not matter. Ultimately, we will adapt. Now, will we have to adapt to figure out how to feed ourselves because the cost of fuel gets too high for everything, raises the cost of everything? I like, without talking about a candidate or not, I like the idea of tariffs on goods coming into the country. That is how other countries are making money on our goods going into their country. I like the idea of no, 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 we want you to build the thing here in America. Imagine if you suddenly were playing a video game. Okay, let's just make this imaginary as possible. Let's say you're playing a video game and you create a land. Okay, and right away your land is going to have people. And if you want to move to the next level of the thing, eventually you have to have industry. Okay, in order to have industry, that means you have to have things in place like an infrastructure, somewhere for them to live, somewhere them for work, somewhere them to eat, and then you got to have the job. Okay, where's the job coming from? With my job, I have been in a semi truck and driven across a lot of the country, and I get to see a lot of people living out maybe an hour away from any town. And my first thought is, wow, this is lovely, but where do you work? Where do you make money? I've heard people say that cities are way too congested, that there's just too many people. Okay, maybe. But that's also people looking for work. And where is work? Work is in big cities, right? That's where people tend to build industry. Now, there's a book out there called Good to Great. And in that book, it talked about using the assets that you have to your advantage. In Nucor's case, they actually listed this in the book. Nucor decided to go out into the country where there was a bunch of farmers, and they built a steel factory in a town with a bunch of farmers. And they said, "Listen, we're going to teach you how to make steel. We already know you're hard workers." That's what they really wanted, was hard workers. So they taught them how to make steel, and with that came a lot of success because right away you could make steel cheaper because you didn't have to pay them the same wages that you paid steel workers up north because they weren't in unions, because they were used to hard work. You didn't have to hire a whole bunch of people to do segregated jobs of, oh, and you only do this amount of work per day. It's, hey, we got work to do. Let's get it done. And you can pay them well, better than they've ever been paid in their life, and they'd be happy and generationally happy, right? People say around here that Nucor stands for nephew, uncle, cousin, or other relative. It's kind of true. Okay, if you know somebody that works there, you might be able to get on out there. It's kind of like your leg in the door. But it does come with hard work. Now, with that hard work, you earned a good wage. It wasn't around any big city. Nucor is located out in Darlington towards Dovesville, which is about a, I don't know, 15, 20-minute drive outside of Florence. Florence, for a lot of people, is a city in South Carolina. It is rapidly growing because of industry, but it's because of that experiment. It's because of many experiments like it, where corporations have moved their businesses out to where there are hardworking people that just want an opportunity. And they've moved their industry away from people who felt entitled, who felt like, oh no, I belong to this special organization, so you're going to pay me top dollar. Okay, well, if I'm making money, I want to eliminate how much I'm having to pay people and maximize my profits. So what do? I go to where people will work for less money and we'll see what happens, right? In this case, it was successful. There's a lot of other people doing that kind of thing. We have a ton of industry moving to Florence, South Carolina. Our census is growing rapidly. Our infrastructure is needing to grow rapidly with it. The water system is being updated. There's all kinds of things that are being updated, but traffic is getting crazier. It makes it a little more nerve wracking. You're driving around because you have a lot more people to deal with. We are kind of in a hub between New York and Miami. So if you're coming up or down 95, you're going to run through Florence. We have a Buc-ee's now. Buc-ee's is a big draw. From that exit, you can go to Myrtle Beach. Everybody loves Myrtle Beach, right? They all come through Florence, heading to Myrtle Beach usually. So I-20 dead ends into Florence. If you're coming from Atlanta, you're going to end up in Florence. Industry has realized, oh, this is a good spot to move. There's people here who want jobs. Okay. But where are they coming from? There's my thought. There's a lot of industry coming here, but where are they moving from? There's got to be places out there who, for a long time, have had a good working history with the people and with that neighborhood and with all of that infrastructure. And the company goes, you know what? We can't even afford to work here anymore because of the unions or because of the energy costs or because of the rising cost of living. Maybe it's just because capitalism works and at a certain point becomes unlivable. So they've shut down the industry and they've moved and relocated down here. Now, what does that do for all those people up there when they're suddenly out of jobs? Recently, down in Georgetown, there was a paper mill, International Paper, closed the doors. They employed over 600 people, and they decided, you know what? As of the end of this year, we're no longer going to be open. That's it. We're done. Okay. Where are they making paper? Where is that company making paper? Did they have somewhere nearby that's better off? Why did they leave the area? I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm questioning. Is it the economy itself? Is it competition? Now, let's say you're going to govern all of these people as your video game scenario. Okay, you're going to govern these people. What information do you give them? What laws do you give them? How do you make them happy? All of this stuff comes at the idea of we have a president who's going to be in charge, or so we say, of the country. Does the president really have power? Is it Congress? Is it the House? Is it a combination of all of the things? I mean, if we believe in the stuff that our gym teacher, history teacher taught us, it's the combination, it's that balance, right? You got the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branches that work in balance with each other to try to pass laws and regulate things. And hopefully that all works together. Does it? I don't know. I'm just asking, does it? All I know is we have a super popular podcast run by a guy who is a self, he talks about himself all the time about being a meathead and a guy who just really loves the UFC and loves, working out and being in the gym. But he's has a curious mind and he just happens to have the most popular podcast in the world. Had an open invitation to all of the candidates to come on and talk. And Kamala originally had said yes, and then she said no, and then she said, well, maybe you can come to me, and all this craziness. But they wanted to do it like a circus. They wanted to have a room full of people giving her pointers and tips and stuff like that. Or you got someone who like Trump who just says, okay, I'll just swing by and we'll do some time. And he came in and they did 3 hours. And I listened to it and it was good. It was a conversation. It wasn't about the presidency per se. It was just about him. Like, what was it like being in the office when you first walked in? What was it? You get inaugurated, then what happens? I mean, it was just a conversation, right? It wasn't this CNN talking points and it wasn't, you know, blasting him with fired questions about, how do you feel about this? What do you think about that? Just, hey, who are you as a person? And Rogan has said he wanted to do that with everybody. Kamala backed out. JD Vance says, I'll go, I'll do it. I thought his interview was better. Um, I think that JD Vance is a very articulate fella who has a good opportunity to possibly be the president one day. And he handled himself as such. He had a good conversation as a human being with another human being. And I was impressed. Um, you kind of hope for that kind of conversation no matter what you look at for someone who's going to run your country. Let us find out who the person is. Okay. I don't need the same rehearsed lines over and over again that is just a soup salad of conversation. I want to hear, what do you think? Like, let's talk outside the box. Let's talk about who you are as a person. Let's talk about your values. Let's talk about things that you think when you're in this scenario or that scenario. I mean, we're going to be given a vote to one of these people saying that, all right, for the next 4 years, you're my person. Now, do I wish that we had a better option um, for a female candidate for president? Sure. I would have loved Nikki Haley or Tulsi Gabbard or, I mean, even Condoleezza Rice. I mean, there's lots of women out there who, in power, in the right position, would be an excellent president. Um, I just don't think Kamala is it. So anyway, that's it. That's all I'm going to talk about the election. This is the week, all right? This is when you're supposed to go down and exercise your right as an American and vote. And hopefully only Americans will vote, not a whole bunch of outside influence. Um, I've heard on various things that California is one of the states that does not. It's actually illegal for them to ask for your voter ID or your voter registration or your ID in general. Um, I hope that's not the case, but I don't know. I'm just a dude here in Florence. So go Gamecocks, go America, and go vote. That's it. Y'all take care. Thanks for listening. God bless us. And cue the cow.
Cue the cow. Moo, baby.